I will turn it over to you, Michael.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Great. Well, I'm Michael Sakata, head of MTBMA, the Maryland Transportation Builders and Materials Association. Most of you know, but for those who don't, we encourage, develop, and protect the needs of the transportation, construction, and materials industry. We've been around since 1948 to identify, address, resolve problems affecting contractors, and really organizing, promoting meeting, classic seminars, and maintain a well-informed industry, an engaged industry like this very interesting, unique product we'll hear about from today from Bloom. I actually had the pleasure of touring their plant in DC not too long ago, but today it actually seems like a lifetime ago. I've had two folks today who love to do nothing more than to actually have those plant tours. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce two of our speakers. And as April said, as a quick reminder, please type your questions in the chat box and we'll do our best to answer those at the end of the presentation. Our first speaker, James Fatoui, is a wastewater engineer with DC Water who manages Bloom operations at as program manager for Biosolids operations. James ensures that all DC Water and contractual biosolids operations and services at the Blue Plains wastewater treatment plant follow the internal biosolids management plan and system, as well as federal, state, and local regulatory permits and requirements. He also oversees
I just lost your audio. I don't know if that is just me.
So how about now?
Yes.
Okay. Where was I? James does a lot of things. And by the way, James, did you get a haircut recently?
No, I'm trying to look.
He oversees the blending, the greenhouse, and co-digestion operations, including the management of activities of the 50 contractor drivers, crane operators, dispatchers. James holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the University of British Columbia and worked for Blue Tech Research and Engineers Without Borders before joining DC Water. Our second speaker, Bobby Howells, has 10 years experience in the private sector, business environment, and has been an urban zinc contractor since 2015. He holds a BS in business administration from Susquehanna University. As a project manager with Urban and Zinc, his areas of focus are earthwork and grading, public sector, education K through 12, parks, cemeteries, and stream restoration. Take it away, James.
All right. Thanks for that intro, Mike. I'm just going to load up my presentation here. All right. Hopefully everybody can see that. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Just 1 second.
And just so if everyone can turn off their video, that will help with the resolution while James is presenting here.
Yeah, sorry, I
You need help?
saved it in one place and opened up the wrong one. All right.
Maybe a joke while we wait.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Mike, didn't you have some stand-up
Yeah,
jokes
right.
ago?
I had a couple jokes here.
That's part of your job.
I was going to say a few months ago, I had a pleasure of going through Bloom and learning all the different things there and where they store all the dead bodies and all the fun stuff. If you ever get a chance to tour that plant, it's actually really remarkable what they're doing there.
All right. Looks like I got it up here. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, so as Mike mentioned, I'm a wastewater engineer and I'm current program manager at Blue Plains. And so I'm going to talk about some of the projects that we've done, incorporating it into construction and just general use of the material. Just quick background. So this material is a biosolid. It comes from the wastewater facility at Blue Plains in DC. And basically, when you treat wastewater, you get a solid material, and that's a combination of organic matter and nutrients and all the stuff that goes through our body. And what we did in 2014 was we installed a very unique system that basically sterilizes that solid material and stabilizes it and makes it into a very, safe and nice to use product. And that's ultimately what became Bloom. Now, some of the benefits of this project, of course, were, we make this nice material, which is called a Class A biosolid, but we also generate renewable energy, which cuts greenhouse gas emissions and really saves the authority a lot of money. So it's been a great project. But one of the production, the outputs of that is our material. So what is Bloom and why should you use it? So a biosolid has a lot of benefits. Our particular material is a great source of organic matter, has some of the main macronutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus, which are organic, and then you have a whole bunch of micronutrients, copper, zinc, molybdenum, sulfur, in levels that can be quite beneficial to certain plants. We also see a great amount of drought resistance. We last year, we had that very dry summer in August and September, but some of our farmers using our material had some of their best bean and corn yields they'd ever seen. And so there's a lot of benefits to using a material like this. And as I mentioned, because we've sterilized it, we've made it completely safe to use, and we have to submit all that data to the EPA. They might have joined today, and I apologize for all the 200-page reports I have to send you, but we take a lot of pride in making sure that our material is as safe as it can be. So this is the main reason why you can use biosolids. And one of the other reasons, which Bobby, I'm sure will allude to, is that it's quite an inexpensive material. We sell the base product for $3.50 a yard, which, if you know, in this region is quite inexpensive for an organic amendment or a topsoil. We've got a couple of different products. So the main product, which comes right off the press, is our Fresh Bloom, our cake material. That's the majority of what we sell. We also make a bag material. That's where we dried it out and bagged it. We have a few blended materials. Again, just a little bit less nutrients, higher on the organic matter, and most of those sub-products are more for usability. The main cake product is a little bit sticky. These ones are a little bit easier to spread. You can put them through a compost spreader. For construction, it can depend on your use. Many of our customers use that base material because it's a very inexpensive product. So that's for the most part what I'm going to be talking about today. But there are some great uses for that mulch and that sand sawdust material. So, it's a biosolid material, and some people are a little bit uncomfortable with its origin, but we've been doing this for 4 years now. We've done a lot of projects throughout DC and Maryland. So the project I'm going to talk about today is the Route 5 interchange, which is an SHA project in Brandywine. But we've sold topsoil to DC Clean Rivers. So those are a bunch of stormwater enrichment projects throughout the district. We've worked on community hospital in Virginia. DC Department of Transport also uses it for their tree planting program. And as Bobby is going to talk about, there's several schools in Anne Arundel and Montgomery County where they're using our material as part of their site works for urban zinc. So we've had a lot of success. We've had a lot of folks using our product. Confident, and we've done a lot of research into how it works for grass and field crops, and I've seen a lot of good benefits. So you can have confidence that it's been used, it's effective, and I'm going to talk about one particular example today. So as I mentioned, Lane Construction was working on was the main contractor for the Brandywine interchange. So they're upgrading the interchange on Route 5 that crosses Brandywine Road. And part of that is going to involve a lot of site work and a lot of topsoil and grading at the end of it. And they were looking at a fair amount of expense for trucking in finished topsoil as well as trucking out existing salvage soil. And what we were able to do is, we met them at a unique time when our material was first coming on the market. And they were looking at options because just buying topsoil can be quite expensive, especially ones that meet the SHA spec. And we figured out that they could incorporate our material into the existing salvage. So if you're from Southern Maryland, you know that we have a very high clay soil out here. That makes it difficult to do a lot with that. But one of the benefits of an organic amendment like ours is you can really break up that clay soil and make it into a usable base for growing things like turf grass. And so we were able to kind of find a ratio that worked for them. I'm going to talk a little bit about the SHA spec, and it's great. I'm glad that John and Tyler are here. We've worked a lot with them. So part of the initial challenge with incorporating our material, it's a new product, so we're not on a lot of product lists, and we had to find a way to meet this specification. The grading, because we're using a clay soil, but also some of the organic matter and conductivity tests. So we provide a lot of organic matter, and that's one of the benefits of using it as a subsoil, as a soil base. We can help you meet that. Here for a salvage soil, you're looking at, or furnished soil, you're looking at 1 to 4% that you're going to need as a minimum, and that can be provided by Bloom. But this creates an interesting challenge because our material is both a great source for organic matter, but also a great source of nutrients. That makes it a little bit tough for us to meet that soluble salt spec. So because we have a lot of nitrogen, we have a lot of ammonia in the material, and that'll show up in that electrical conductivity test. Now, we've done enough tests to know that that's not going to inhibit your germination, but when it comes to a specification, John and Tyler, they're worried about having high TDS in the soil, because that's going to inhibit growth in the future. You've got runoff from salt application on your roads, so you need a very low limit there. But what we found is we don't limit it with that high ammonia. You can see here, as the ammonia content in our material decreases, so does the electrical conductivity. And so, we're talking to them actually at working out some exceptions, or maybe having Bloom on a preferred product list. But that is one of the challenges, is that your material, this is a new material, so you're going to have some discussions with the owner operators or potentially the specification engineers about how to fit it in. In this case, because SHA has that nice salvage soil spec, the EC level is a little bit higher, and we were able to find a ratio that worked really well for Lane. And so you can see here, we're taking the subsoil, we're mixing it with Bloom. We also had to get a little bit of sand just because the texture was, as I mentioned, very high in the clay range. So we added about 10% Bloom and 10-15% sand, and we're able to meet that salvage soil spec. And again, here is it in June of 2017, and the next year we saw some just really awesome results with germination and growth. And that was as Bloom mixed with the salvage soil, and we're the primary source of nutrients and organic matter. So you can see some really great results from incorporating our material. And so, some of the benefits that Lane was seeing was, if you're paying for furnished topsoil, you're paying $20 to $40 a yard. Our material retails at $3.50 a yard. Now, of course, Brandywine, we're quite close, so the hauling cost is limited there. But you're going to limit the haul anyways, because you're not going to have to take the salvage soil from your site. You're not going to have furnished topsoil delivered. And again, you're only going to need to add 10-20% Bloom into that in situ soil, and you're going to see some great results. So there's some real substantial savings. And as well, because we're providing organic nutrients, you're going to see reduction in your amount of N that you have to apply. So there's some real great benefits. And Bobby's going to talk a little bit about this, but they incorporate it as part of their site work program, and definitely see some of those savings as well. So that's the Lane project. I wanted to talk about another research project that was University of Maryland and SHA sponsored. Basically, they were looking at, how does a biosolid product like Bloom compare with conventional fertilizers on sort of some poor quality existing soils. So we took a site from an SHA site that, as you can see, is not the best quality soil. Had some existing equipment there, probably maybe some legacy contamination issues. Not a lot of nutrients, not a lot of organic matter. And we were looking at, we were going to play around with different fertilizers, different applications, and how are those materials going to perform. And so here's kind of the lab, the study design. So we have our 3 different products: Bloom, the Bloom sawdust sand, and then the Bloom mulch product, and then also SHA's very nice deer compost product, and then conventional fertilizer. And we looked at just top dressing, as well as tilling it into the, seeing what some of the benefits that we saw there. And this is after the first kind of growing season, you see a lot of growth in that area. And one of the key metrics that we looked at was above ground biomass. And you can see first season and second season, you saw a substantial amount of biomass compared to a conventional fertilizer. Now, you can see that deer compost is also quite a good product, and that was one of our determinations. So it's definitely, if you can compost deer waste effectively, you make a nice material, and it appears that SHA does. But it looked like our base material, because it provided all that organic matter and all that nutrients, really gave you a lot of growth in that first and then that second season as well. The mulch product, it's more organic matter focused, so it's got a little bit less of that organic nitrogen, so it makes sense that second season you'd see a little bit less. Same with the sawdust sand. We also saw a lot of benefits with hydraulic conductivity. So again, we've done research, we've seen practical applications of our material, and a great deal of success. And so, happy to help people understand the product and incorporate it into their own projects so that they can see some of the success, and also do something nice for the environment, as well as, of course, save some money. So thanks. That's my presentation. I appreciate it. Appreciate you for listening.
Thank you very much, James. Bobby?
Great. Thank you very much, James. Let me figure out how to share my slides here. Might take a while to load them. I think there's 64 of them. Should only be about 2 minutes a slide. So. No, I'm just kidding. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Nope.
Hold on.
Just a reminder to everyone to type in any questions. I saw we do have one for James, which if it ends up taking a moment here, we might go ahead and answer.
How about now?
Not yet.
Yeah, so I can answer your question there, Lisa. Great that you're joining us. I'm glad that you can see that Bloom is a biosolid cake product can be used and is actually something that people want to purchase. So in that case, we worked directly with the contractor. So Lane was they were doing the site work and the primary construction. And it really depends on the project. Sometimes you work with the engineer, sometimes you work with the site work, sometimes you try and work with the owner. Just depends on who's kind of in a position of decision making, and also who you can find that's interested in trying to do something new. That's kind of the key there that we found. But yeah, all right, I'll pass it off there to Bobby.
Okay, James. Everyone, are you able to see my first slide? I can't see what you're seeing. So.
Yep.
Looks good.
Okay, great. So I appreciate the opportunity to just talk a little bit about some of the benefits that we've seen incorporating the Bloom cake product into our work. Urbans and Contractor is an earthwork and grading provider. It's been in business since 1959. Our primary focus is public sector, low bid work. We are probably one of, if not the largest contractor that performs these services for school districts throughout Maryland. I don't know as though there's anyone who does more schools than we do. And one of the things that we run into on these schools is strict specifications when it comes to topsoil, which is sometimes challenging because we own a warranty on these projects for a period of a year after placement, and we keep the grass looking beautiful. And what would typically happen is, in the school districts don't have the funding to continue the maintenance thereof with appropriate fertilizers and so on. And so the Bloom has really helped us for getting initial results as well as results that last past a warranty period. Let's see here, slide 2. Okay, so as Mike mentioned earlier, being in school construction, we stretch across the state in a number of different counties. We have projects in Anne Arundel County, Baltimore County, Montgomery County, Howard County. If and when Harford County chooses to start school construction, we will certainly actively bid for projects in those areas. But one of the things that remains consistent is that each county has a spec that requires the elevation of the organic matter of the material. Anne Arundel County is typically 3 to 5% or 5 to 10%, depending on the designing architect. If you know anything about Anne Arundel County soils, they are extremely sandy and they are very difficult to grow grass in. For years, we had been utilizing an alternative product, a leaf grow product, to incorporate into the topsoil. And we were having results that were not consistent. We noticed that during times of significant rainfall, the woody aspect of the product would actually float to the top. It would choke out seedlings, and it made establishing turf fairly difficult. And so when we came to know of Bloom in the following year, I guess it was about 18 months ago, we started using Bloom. All that kind of changed for us. How do we go about determining the amount of Bloom that needs to be used and how we're going to incorporate it is based on traditional methods. We randomly sample the existing topsoil as it's in the ground pre-bid, so we have an idea of what we're dealing with. Once we have the material, once we win the job and we have the material stripped and stockpiled, we take random samples from different parts on and within the pile. We combine these in-house with Bloom product in different ratios to try to find a sweet spot. We send all these tests out to a certified lab like Waypoint. I know that there are others available. You can do things through the Penn State Extension Office, University of Maryland, a lab of your choosing. And then we take those results and we send them off to a third-party turfgrass agronomist, as the specifications typically require. And we use M&M Consulting for almost all of, if not all of, our agronomic recommendations. They're based out of Virginia. They have an approach that is not a designer approach. It is, hey, how do we grow grass? They recognize that not everyone has professional turf management, and so they look for solid recommendations that almost anyone can follow to be able to grow decent turf grass in the Mid-Atlantic region. On the lower right-hand side there, you can see a snag from one of our specifications. Looks like this is from Anne Arundel County, and this is the process that we are expected to follow when we are placing this material on a site. We have to go through once the area is on subgrade, we have to go through and till it to a 4-inch depth, and then what we do is we rock hound that to remove anything that's larger than 1 inch. And then we are expected to place 2 inches of topsoil over that area, and then we need to till that together to create a transition zone. And then we are to place the remainder of the topsoil inclusive of our Bloom, and then we fine grade that, and then it gets either seeded or sodded. One thing that we always need to keep an eye on is because of that transition zone that I explained, we need to test the subsoil prior to doing that. One of the objections that we have consistently had on this spec is that they being the designer, they have taken subsoil at a depth of 4 to 6 inches below the surface, where roots for grass do not may not reach, and they have introduced that material into the topsoil. And typically that throws off test results if they go later to probe down to a deeper depth. So we always test the subsoil first, see what we're dealing with. We provide those results to the agronomist for his recommendations as he's looking at the test results that come from Waypoint. But you can see it's a pretty involved process, especially when we're doing large areas. To give you an example, we're currently doing the Crofton High School project, which is a net new high school in Anne Arundel County, and there is 27 acres of placed topsoil on the 60-acre site. So that I think we stripped a total of about 40,000 yards of existing topsoil after we deforested the site. We screened that on site, and then we're placing back about 27,000 cubic yards. And I have a couple pictures of that coming up. So how do we incorporate this? You can see here in the background, this is actually a field from the Crofton High School. You can see the subsoil there, which is extremely sandy. And then in the background, you'll see topsoil. And then on top of that, that dark black material is the Bloom cake product. And that's getting ready to be incorporated. Primarily the equipment that we use for that, for the incorporation are bobcats, track bobcats with bobcat attachments, be it tiller, rockhound, etc. So this is our process. We till, we rockhound, we spread, and then we till again. This is areas you can see right up against a building, also in Anne Arundel County. The gentleman on the left here is, excuse me, rockhounding this area, and you can see that there was probably an access path here, and so we're going through and cleaning up these stones. This is an aerial shot of the Crofton High School project. This area down here is a Bermuda field, so it's dormant, it's not dead. But these fields here, this is actually that field from 2 slides back. So you can see this fence line here. That was actually what was seen right here. Okay, so to give you an idea of where it is on the project. These areas, the slopes, all these fields, they were all treated with the Bloom product, and you can see just from the sky. Oh, and these are from the beginning of April. So really, grass was just starting to come out of dormancy, and you can see just how stunning the color is of the turf grass. Up here, slide north of these fields are the existing fields at the Crofton Middle School. And I leave that here because if you were to visit those fields on any given day, they look like just a normal field. They don't look to be in disrepair like this photo would suggest. And so I bring that to your attention because nothing has happened on these fields except grow grass and cut them, and you can see the difference during the same time period, which was the beginning of April. And that is due almost exclusively to the use of that Bloom. Without it, this existing topsoil was not very good at all. It was your typical Anne Arundel County sand. I think it had maybe 2% organic matter, and that had a lot to do with the fact that it was an existing forest in a lot of these areas. So why do we use Bloom? One, it is easy to incorporate. We have 2 methods really that we use for this. We bucket mix it. If we find that it's easier to mix up portions of this product prior to application on slopes where it may be difficult to get a small bulldozer. Also, track bobcats, if you look in that top right corner, track bobcats are generally better when you operate them up and down when on a slope rather than side to side. It'll keep you from throwing a track. So when we're going to put on small slopes or up against a building, we typically mix them in the parking lot. And we just, if it's 3 parts topsoil and 1 part bloom, then that's how we mix it, bucket by bucket. We pick up a big area and we mix everything together. We try to get it a homogeneous mix. And then we'll transfer that out with our end dumps, dump it, grade it, and then do our tilling. Also, the material is consistently available. We had previously experienced significant challenges with product availability for the other product that I mentioned earlier. As you can imagine, on a large site like this, which gets 27 acres of placed topsoil, where we're adding, 1.5 inches of material, we need a significant number of deliveries to make this happen. I mean, it's nearly, I think it was nearly 1,000 or 1,500 cubic yards just of bloom that goes down on this job. So it's a significant amount of deliveries. And when we have to maintain a schedule, and you're waiting on someone to produce a product, they can really hold your progress. We have not had those issues with bloom thus far. We have dependable outcomes. The grass looks gorgeous time after time, whether it's seed or whether it's sod. Test results show stability of the product. The results based on seem to maintain the macronutrient content of the nitrogen well into the 2nd and even 3rd growing season, which I think James was able to show on one of his slides. We get fast visual results because of the high nitrogen content. You get a real fast green up, and our spec on these jobs before the owner will take acceptance is that it have a 95% stand of grass. And we had previous experience where when it's similar to your own yard at your house, right? Where if you're struggling to get grass to grow, weeds have no trouble growing in its place. And so we had a lot of difficulty in Anne Arundel County in particular, being able to grow grass at a rate that was faster than weeds wanted to grow. And once we started to use the Bloom product, we saw that time significantly shrink. We saw fast green results, and an owner that really they can't say enough good things about the way the turf grass looks now, which shortens our the times associated with maintaining the turf grass that's in place, thereby lowering our costs. And then, of course, the greedy reason too is that we are a for-profit company, and when we can buy a product for about $3 a yard as opposed to $23 a yard, it was a no-brainer for us. And I think that's all I have. At the end of the day, what we do here at Urban Zinc is dirt. So the Bloom is one portion of the work that we do. We incorporate it into our topsoil consistently. I have had no challenges getting it approved on any of our products, on any of our projects. And we just don't have enough good things to say about it.
Bobby, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Appreciate both James and you coming on here. Just want to open it up to questions here. I think we have you, and James, you answered the first one about how to get that Bloom into a project. Definitely appreciate you commenting on that. Any roadblocks that you see, or how, what is the best scenario? I know you're working with different agencies. We talked about DC, Maryland, obviously Virginia, and obviously the different sections of those agencies. What has typically been your best bet to market that out there?
Yeah, and I mean, Bobby can speak to this too, because he's had to do the sort of direct advocacy, but usually it's the person that's the end user is going to have the most the strongest case and going to push it through. We've tried to do kind of a top-down approach, specifically in Maryland and PG County with some of their municipal specs, and have not met a lot of success. It's also we've tried to do it with DC Department of Transport too, and not seen a lot of success. So it seems like it can be a bit challenging to have those discussions with regulators. But if you get a few interested sort of project managers like Bobby, and they really see the benefits, they're gonna kind of push that through and kind of prove to their owner or their primary contractor that this is something they should look at. We've had some success with design engineers as well, bringing them out to the facility, showing them where successful projects have been, getting them comfortable. So we've seen a few folks put it on their design engineer specs, included as a approved product. But yeah, so it's a couple different avenues there. And I will say this though, SHA has been nice to work with because they've been very open in discussing with us, the potential workarounds. So that's been a nice surprise. So there are some regulators you can talk to.
And obviously, Bobby mentioned obviously the dependable outcomes. I think, everybody looking for that these days, stability in product and fast visual results. It kind of speaks for itself. We got a couple questions. Have you tried using other biosolids products for landscaping projects other than Bloom? Maybe to Bob here.
We have not. So what is typically found in the spec is that it'll say 3 to 5% organic matter, incorporate compost such as leaf grow or approved equal.
Yeah.
And so the project owners, they're accustomed to and have knowledge of the leaf grow product.
Yeah.
And so that's what we always used, because we could always turn back and say, look, this is the product that you have specified. We're compliant. And then when we really started to run into issues with being able to get the volume of product that we need, then we started to look around. And so my agronomist, Jeff Michael from M&M Consulting, mentioned this product. My go-to sod provider, Doug Leckliter at Laytonville Turf Farms, took a sample of it to his farm. We saw the results, and then we started to investigate it. And when we saw the benefits, I was able to get it tested, and James was instrumental in getting me all the data that I needed to get this approved for use on these projects. And now it's our go-to.
Well, and this leads me to another question. A lot of contractors want to know how much material is potentially available to a large construction job. You talked about, the 1,500 cubic yards, and James can maybe talk about that. That's really a big question for our guys. What is available?
Yeah, and if biosolids and specifically large wastewater plants, it's always been a case of having too much and not knowing what to do with it. And so at Blue Plains, we make 450 tons of this a day. And so, for the time being, we have quite a lot of availability. Now the product is becoming a little more popular. We're finding, at least in the spring season, we have a lot of farmers who are using that material. So supply is becoming a little bit constrained, but in general, we have a substantial volume that we're producing here. And Bobby will call me a week or so in advance, asking for 5 or 10 loads for a certain job. And, we're making 150 loads a week. So that's very easy to absorb at least within the context of our current production. And one interesting thing is, in addition to Blue Plains, we're seeing a lot of other wastewater facilities looking at putting in a similar process. So Piscataway wastewater facility, they're going to put in a regional production plant and should be commissioned in 2023. Initially looking at 50 wet tons a day, but that's going to ramp up to about 250 wet tons a day by 2030. And we've had discussions with our city of Arlington, city of Fairfax, some other regional biosolid producers looking at making a similar product. So, as our demand increases and the popularity increases, we see there's also going to be some supply increases as well down the road. So,
of course,
we have some confidence that we've got a lot of demand that we can absorb at present. So yeah, for now it's looking very steady, and yeah.
Question here: have you ever used water treatment residuals along with bloom or other residuals as part of a turf establishment?
Oh, at Urban Zinc, we have not.
Okay.
Yeah, we've looked at it, Trudy. You know, one of the challenges that we have in kind of marketing this product is it is a little bit wet, and now some folks like Bobby can work around that very easily. They're quite a large scale. You know, they've got some heavy equipment, so that's not hard for them to work with. Trouble with water treatment residuals, you know, you're adding stickiness to stickiness there. So, you know, when we're thinking about blending, we're often thinking about making a product that's a little bit more usable for some of those smaller users, smaller landscapers. And so the treatment residuals I've seen have not been terribly excited with. Obviously, you have a lot of sand there, which can be beneficial, but the consistency isn't something that I've really played around with. And I am also a little bit worried about like residual chlorine and stuff. So again, I haven't played around with it, partially because of the consistency.
Okay. What about the percentage of total solids in the fresh bloom product?
Yeah, so, you know, this is more of a biosolids question. One of the nice benefits that we found as a function of the THP digestion process is we get a little bit better dewaterability. I think conventional digestion, you're hovering around 22%. Same with lime stabilization. We see on average 31% total solid. Now that might be something to do with how we treat the phosphorus, because we're adding ferric in the primary clarifiers. But yeah, we see pretty good dewaterability. That said, you know, some folks on the marketing side are going to tell us that's a lot too much water. A lot of farmers accuse us of trying to sell them water, which I would say I would prefer not to. But so yeah, for a biosolid, it's pretty good dewaterability, and that's with you know, bell filter presses at the end of our plant.
Anything? We got one last question here. Have you had any feedback related to product odor of fresh or cured bloom, either good or bad?
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind Bobby answering this one as well, because one of the challenges that we face with a biosolid is odor, and you know, compared to other biosolids, our odor is fantastic, but out in the marketing world, there are going to be some folks that aren't going to like it. It does have an ammonia smell at a large site, and when you incorporate it into the soil, that disappears pretty quickly. But there are going to be some folks who are not excited about it. So we find farming and large scale construction to not be an issue, but household landscaping is not something we would recommend that cake material, just because of the usability and the odor. Now the cured product, when made correctly, which my previous supervisor Bill Brower came up with, totally eliminates the odor, and it's this wonderful, just one of the operators calls it this beautiful caramel color, and it's granulated. It's very little odor. Of course, our problem is actually making it. Takes quite a lot of time with the windrow turner. So our main focus has been on marketing that cake material, because from a product attribute standpoint, it has everything you really need, as long as you can get a little bit over that hurdle of usability.
Yeah, and I could just piggyback on that and say, I grew up in rural Pennsylvania in farm country, and this material smells nothing like what a farmer's field would traditionally smell like after a fresh fertilization. It does have a bit of an odor to it. Once it is incorporated, you know, it's when it's sitting in the big pile is when, you know, you can smell that there is something there. But it's not repulsive, I would say. And once it is, you know, distributed, there is no odor to speak of. But, you know, we jokingly say, you know, when people say that it, you know, oh, you know, that stinks, you know, we say, well, you know, it smells like money to us, because we know that it is a great product. It produces on site after site after site. We have no issues with this product. delivering a result that consistently meets or exceeds owners' expectations and the specifications. And that is what that's what we're in business to do. So I don't really consider the odor to be anything to worry about.
And I agree with you. Being at their plant down there, I didn't smell anything that was, those pungent or wasn't outside the norm. Definitely wasn't overwhelming at all.
Yeah, and certainly the products, it smells more on a 110-degree day than it does on a 60-degree day. But again, that's when it's in a stockpile. When the material is moved and distributed and then sodded over or seeded and strawed, it's a non-issue.
You could say the same about me. And a follow-up question to that, James. How did you establish a market acceptable price for Bloom?
Well, that's a good question. I think with the base material, it really, it had to do a lot with kind of our primary market, which is farming, and what the comparative nitrogen products that they're going to be buying are costing, and that's kind of where we got that sort of $4 or $5 a yard price for the base material. When it comes to our blends, we found that we see results very similar to competitors like Leaf Grow or Grow, similar other yard waste based composts. So we're closer to them in terms of price, $15 to $20 a yard. So yeah, it definitely is less for that cake material. But it has to do kind of with the primary market we're selling to. Yeah.
Got it. Can you quantify the local demand for a product like Bloom?
Well, we do that exercise often.
Right.
From what we can understand, like if we are, if MES is on the line, I know Al is there, and I've always told them I'm never trying to steal their markets, because I personally actually mix Leaf Grow and Bloom together in my own garden and see awesome potting soil as a result. But theirs is a good indicator of some market size on the landscaping, and that's helped us understand that size from the farming end, where we sell maybe 50-60% of our material. In Maryland alone, there's hundreds of thousands of acres, and you can put anywhere from 5 to 15 tons an acre, depending on what you're allowed to do as an agronomic nitrogen application. So we see sufficient demand for Blue Plains based production. I would say the limiting factor is more the timing. It's very cyclical. You get a lot of demand at this time of year, and maybe a bit more in the fall, but really falls off in the winter. And so for a wastewater plant, it's trying to find what are your avenues there. And we have some options based on our permit that can ease that. We can store it on farmers' fields, and we're really trying to shift over to that direction so that we can get the farmers their material in the winter and they can spread it as needed. And then, when the construction landscaping demand picks up, we can make sure that we've got availability for folks like Bobby. So our expectation is, there's sufficient demand. Just a matter of, convincing folks it's a good product to use.
Sure. I think that's it for questions. I think, we definitely want to leave everybody kind of with, more information. Where can we go to get more information from James? And if we can contact Bobby, if that's okay, for their own specific projects. And I know folks would probably be interested in seeing both sides. I'm sure Bobby wouldn't mind. Would they, Bobby?
No problem at all. Reach out anytime. I don't know if my email is on there. It's B like Bobby, Howells, HOWELLS, like Sam, at urbanzinc.com. B Howells at urbanzinc.com. Reach out anytime if anybody would like to come by one of our jobs and take some samples of work that's in place, or see the incorporation process, or visit established fields or grass areas on some of these jobs just to look around. Happy to set that up.
Excellent. Mr. Sakata?
Yeah, and I wanted to add, we've worked with several different construction companies and contractors, and again, as good as our material is, it is also how good the user is, and I've been very impressed with Urban Zinc. They've done a great job with the product. So there's definitely, our material helps them, but part of their great results is that they're a really good company. So I'm really glad that Bobby could join us here today, so you can see his great work. So hire him.
Thank you both.
This is John Krause. I just have a couple of quick questions, if I might. I wasn't able to use the chat feature. I regret.
Oh, yeah. Good.
I was very, very impressed by Mr. Howell's presentation, and I think it was very gratifying to see that somebody was paying attention to the subsoil issue, which is something that I've been trying to draw attention to at State Highway for a long time without much success. But I do have a question for Mr. Howells about the mix rate. Once again, I know it was presented, but I just want to verify. The mix rate that you were using for the Bloom product for the high school, what was that rate?
If it would be helpful, John, I'd be happy to send you the recommendations that we got from our agronomist, but it was between 1 inch and 1.5 inches.
Okay. Well, that's what I guessed based on how green it was, to tell you the truth.
So what we find is that each county has it seems to have a different specification. It's difficult to mix less than 1 inch,
right?
Just in terms of spreading it out, right? But Montgomery County is a little interesting because the specification for us down there is the soil needs to initially have I think it was 2% organic matter, but then when you prior to placement or at time of placement, by volume, 1/3 of the topsoil mix needed to be a compost. It seems kind of arbitrary, but that's the way they have it done. So it's kind of a little different depending on which job you're at.
Right. Appreciate that. Thank you. And I will be interested to receive that from you. The question, one of the things that we struggle with at State Highway is to try to stay within the limits of the nutrient management law, even when it involves the application of compost materials. Because as you've seen, at the rates you're using at 1 inch or 1.5 inches per over the soil surface, you're really adding quite a large nitrogen load. And even though MDA has been a little bit more lenient in its view of natural compost products, we still don't want to exceed too much the caps, because quite frankly, a lot of our areas are under monitoring for TMDL, Chesapeake Bay water quality, and so there's a perceived risk of going over that limit. The other problem, and this is something that Mr. Alexander, I know he's on the call here, and I have discussed, is the soluble salts question. You haven't had any observable soluble salts issues with this product?
No, and it's interesting because when we first got into conversations with James and his team, that was actually raised by Bloom in saying that, hey, this is great, but looking at the spec, one of the issues that you may run into is that our product tends to raise the soluble salt load. So we went ahead and I have not had a single test result come back with anything above a very low based on Maryland values. Mm-hmm. And so the short answer to your question is no, I haven't had a problem. And the longer answer is I've kind of looked for one just to see when and where we might see that result, and I'm not seeing it.
Okay, that's excellent. And this is just informational for probably several people in the room, including Mr. Sakata was at the MTBMA. So am I correct?
Yep.
Very good. Well, we are definitely, speaking for State Highway now, interested in using a lot more compost products. And we've recently had a little bit of some management turnover in our office, and it looks like nutrient management is rising to the fore once again of our interests and concerns. And although it's been on a little bit of a slow boil for the past year, I really do think we're going to be making some changes to our specs and looking at increasing the soluble salts levels of compost products, and maybe even, since you've now given me this idea, even from the presentation today, segregating the soluble salts, like for instance the ammonia component, to provide sort of maximum limits for different aspects of the soluble salts, so that the total limit may be very high as long as the component parts are not ridiculously high. So you're giving me some hope there.
Mr. Kraus, thank you very much.
Yeah, no, that was greatly appreciated. And on that nitrogen issue, I think if you're talking about surface spreading, then absolutely, you really have to be careful with how much you're applying. When it comes to incorporation, and Bobby's talking about 1 inch and a half, and our general recommendation, you're not adding more than 10 or 20%. Now that can be a large nitrogen load. Of course, one of the benefits here is it's organic nitrogen, so you're going to get a slower release. So those are some of the things that we kind of lean on to hopefully mitigate the nitrogen monoxygen. But definitely, yeah, if you're trying to meet the organic matter spec, you're kind of caught between not wanting to add up too much N, but also needing to add the organic matter. So, yeah, for surface spreading, that can be a real challenge. Absolutely. Incorporation helps you a little bit there, though.
April, you want to take it away?
Sure. I just want to close this out by thanking everyone. This is a really rich conversation, and appreciate the presentations from James and Bobby and Mike facilitating this. Hopefully you can see my little thank you screen here with our social media handles, which is simply Bloom Soil. If you signed up directly for the webinar, you will have been added to our mailing list. You can unsubscribe at any time. We usually only send you maybe 1 or 2 maximum communications a month. I also wanted to just give a shout out for my colleague Victoria, who joined the sales team back in the fall, and she actually would be the best point of contact if you're looking to potentially purchase Bloom for construction. So her email is here, victoria@bloomsoil.com. You can reach out to me for questions on partnerships, marketing. I deal with soil blenders. We kind of all have different territories. If you're not sure, you can just reach out to us at bloom@bloomsoil.com. And yeah, hopefully all of this will be over soon, and we can get back to bringing people to Blue Plains on tours, because there's nothing like seeing and smelling it in person. So so yeah, look out for that. We will be sharing information about operational changes as they occur. So again, thank you everyone for coming, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Great, thank you
very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.